Hello, my friend. How are you doing? This is Heather. This is episode number, what did I say it was? 95 of the Back to Me podcast. And I have to say, I'm super excited today because today is the day that is the first day of season two. Upload sounds to my podcast videos. Oh my God, it's so hilarious. But yes, it's been a whole year since I um, came up with this iteration, this version of the podcast, and I'm I've been talking to a lot of people. I mean, you know that I talk to lots of people all the time, but if you've been listening, you know that's kind of what I do. But I've been talking to a lot of people lately about the podcast specifically and about where it came from and what it was for and how it came about. And I don't know that I ever shared that with you. So to celebrate um, today's podcast, the first day of season two, I was going to give you the who, what, where, when, why, how, holy moly, what the heck's going on over here. So for those of you who don't know who I am Heather, and this is the Back to Me podcast. And I was on someone else's podcast on, actually, it's not, we've recorded it. It's not coming out until next week. And it's called the Heal Podcast. And Elizabeth is super interesting. You should definitely go and check out her podcast. But she was asking me how this came about. And I don't know if any of you were aware that when I first started, I actually had a business podcast. And when I originally started coaching, so to go way back, I did spend 15 years as a chartered accountant. They now call it a CPA, chartered professional accountant, like way back in the day. And she asked me, it was an interesting question. She asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, what I wanted to be when I grew up was an artist and a veterinarian, and I became an accountant. Whoa, so how did that happen? We that's a whole other story. But yeah, so I was an accountant for a long time. So I have a very extensive business background. But I wasn't happy. And I didn't have a coach at the time. I just struck out on my own and I left my job and I went traveling, and I had been doing yoga after work for stress relief. Wasn't I couldn't do enough yoga apparently. And I went into teaching yoga. That's a whole other story as well of how I got into teaching yoga from being an accountant. But I discovered I loved the health and wellness space. And I loved being able to help people in a way that helps them be happier and be healthier and feel better. So I was teaching yoga. I went back to school for 2 years to become a massage therapist, which was very intense. Oh my goodness. You have no idea, you guys, how intense that was. But anyways, I was loving it, so it didn't matter. And I became a personal trainer. I'm doing all of these things to help people feel their happiest selves, which, I talk about 6 areas of wellness. That was only one of the 6 areas of wellness, the physical wellness. But that was where I was really focusing my time and attention. And then I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm pretty entrenched in health and wellness. 5 or 6 years ago, I was talking to another RMT, actually, even before that. Let's be serious. As soon as I started working in other clinics and having conversations with other massage therapists, I'll say RMT and massage therapist interchangeably if you wonder what the heck I'm talking about. But talking to other therapists, talking to other yoga teachers, when they found out my background, they would ask me questions. Some of them even would come for massages so that they could spend an hour asking me questions. And one day I was speaking with one therapist, and I was just giving her some ideas and some thoughts and some help. And she said to me, "Oh my goodness, Heather, you should be a coach." And the lights turned on. It was almost like I had been dancing around it all of this time, helping people. And when she said that, I just went, "Oh my," it's like a palm to the forehead moment. It's like, "Oh my gosh, of course, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be coaching people." And I started out with business coaching because that's where I was spending a lot of time helping people. So I had a whole back to no, it's called Build a Better Business, Build a Better Business podcast. And I did it for a year, and it was just quick videos of things to think about to create a business specifically for a solopreneur or a very small entrepreneurial business, because you're often doing it all yourself, and you don't always know all the moving parts that you haven't even thought about all the moving parts that you want to have or should have, and how they'll fit together, and how to make sure that you actually can work on your business and in your business sometimes and have a life, because entrepreneurship is a different thing from having a job. Yes, there are times when you have a job that you'll be really busy and you'll have lots to do. Been there, done that. But entrepreneur, it's just a different thing because you are the worker and the boss and the CEO and the board of directors, and and the and you are everything. And you get to clean the toilets if you have a bricks and mortar. But so I was business coaching to help. I especially found people in the health and wellness space really struggled. They really struggled with wanting to be this heart-centered person who was giving and helping, but didn't necessarily know how to be the business person as well. So started out there with the Build a Better Business podcast. Apparently, I like bees. Build a better business, and then it morphed a little bit. After about a year, it morphed. 2020 came. Remember that thing? That thing back in 2020. So, so it morphed, and I started speaking to a lot of coaches and just trying to give some kind of. It was almost like it was evolving, and I didn't know what it was evolving into. So I had a coaches chat. I was trying to give people some guidance, some ideas, still with the intention to help people find their way to what they needed. And then, boom, it happened. October the 29th, 2021, I had a stroke. Ooh, dramatic pause. But, and when I tell people that, if they didn't know it already, they see, first of all, they say, "I can't believe it," or "Oh my gosh, how terrible." And those two things are pretty normal responses. And what's interesting is I would do the same thing. It's like, "Oh my gosh, really? How terrible. You look great, by the way." So, right? My gosh. So, here's the thing about the stroke. I I tell people I was more shocked than anyone, because you can always say, "Oh no, that sounds terrible. I can't believe it." But when it happens to you, you are really shocked. You are inside your body going, "What? These people must be crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. It can't be me." Especially because, and you can list it all off, because I do yoga and I take care of myself and I get lots of sleep and I get cardio and I do all these things to stay healthy. And but it still can happen. Um, for those of you who know anything about medical terms, I will tell you I had an idiopathic dissection of my carotid artery that completely occluded my artery, which was fine because I'm super healthy. But there was a blood clot that formed and went to my brain and caused two strokes the day they told me. Technically, I think I had three by the end of it, but I so I went to the hospital, and I thought they were crazy. I thought, well, I kept asking. I did the typical thing, even though I'm very mindful and try to pause and think. I did the can I go home? You guys don't know what you're talking about conversation. Denial, denial, denial. And luckily, I did realize at some point that I sounded crazy. Of course, it was the perfect place for me to be. Of course, it's possible that something happened to me, and then I just stopped fighting with them. And I said, okay, let's just figure out what we have to do to move forward. So I just did what, I was in the hospital. I did my thing. I was in the hospital for 4 days, but during those 4 days, this is why I tell people the stroke was actually the biggest way, the universe, however you want to describe it, that could kick me in the pants, really get my attention. I was in the hospital, really get my attention, and not really create any huge lasting damage. So there would, I mean, I still have moments of recovery. I still am working on myself. I'm still have some weird, quirky little things that no one would notice resulting from the stroke. I'm the only one who notices because I live inside my body. But for the most part, from the outside and from my day to day activities, I am back to being myself. But while I was in the hospital, I couldn't see properly. I couldn't wear my glasses, and it was COVID. So when I was in the emergency room for 3 days, no one could visit me, so I was alone. I couldn't look at my phone. So what are you going to do? What do we do these days when we're alone and bored? Have you sat in a subway or a bus or a coffee shop or a wait or a line? Even if you're waiting 5 minutes in the line, do we still go to banks? I don't know. I sometimes go to the bank. If people have to wait 5 minutes for anything, their phone is out. So here I am for 3 days waiting to find out if I get to go home, how like what's going on, how bad is it, what's the prognosis, what are we going to do about it? And I couldn't do the things people do, which is look at their phone. I just had to be quiet and sit, watch. It was Halloween weekend in an inner city hospital. So it was in an interesting place. I saw some interesting people, but I just had to sit. And it was almost like a forced silent retreat. Yes. And that's how this podcast came about. Because while I was there, I realized that I could do more than I was doing, but I needed to do it differently. And I could help more people avoid their burnout, avoid them lying in a hospital bed because they hadn't been taking care of themselves. I mean, you still might end up there at some point, but there's things that you can do. There is a physical wellness aspect to your life. That's no denying it. If there's something wrong with you physically, everything else suffers. There is a relationship aspect to wellness in your life. I realized in the hospital how important the relationships were that I had because even though I couldn't look at my phone, even though I couldn't have visitors, I knew that there were people out there and they would send me voice messages. People were concerned about me, and my super awesome husband who was home stressing out, the poor guy. I still feel bad for him, but I think he suffered more than I did. But, you know, there's relationships, there's your financial wealth. If something does happen to you, I couldn't work for quite a period of time. Are you financially stable? Can you weather that storm? How do you feel emotionally? Because I um, have various practices that I've done for a long time. I could kind of I could kind of maneuver my way through that. I was okay. What I eventually ended up doing when I realized that I was fighting with doctors who knew stuff about, I mean, yeah, I know a lot of stuff, but these are doctors, neurologists, spend all their time looking at brains. When I stopped fighting with him and just let him get on with his job, so what I did was I surrendered, said, "Okay, I surrender. I'm here. I'm going to let you do your jobs, but I'm not going to give up on my health and wellness. I'm not giving up my responsibility for my own care, but I'm going to let you do your job." So, what's that talking about? Emotional wellness? Yeah, emotional wellness. And there is this like a purpose. Spiritual wellness for me is a purpose. So, the spiritual wellness is what is my purpose? My purpose is to help a lot of people in whatever way I can, in as big a way as I can. And for me, It actually came to me. The name of this podcast, the Back to Me podcast, came to me in the hospital. And it came to me as just like, dun, da, da, applause. Where's my applause button? I'll play that later. Um, and it came to me as back to me because here I was going to have to do some work to recover myself and take care of myself because I recognized that if I wasn't my best self, then I really couldn't help other people as much as I wanted to do because I was coming from a place that was already depleted. So then I look out and I see all of the people and like the caregivers, oh my gosh, the nursing staff, the doctors, all trying to help people and do their best to help people recover and be well, and they're in a place of depletion. So it's this cycle of giving from a depleted place depletes you more. And I think about if you like often sometimes those two are in opposition to each other right there. So what I see in people, not everyone, is that taking time for themselves, taking care of themselves, they feel like it's taking away from something else. It's taking away from a loved one, it's taking away from the things they need to be doing. It's taking away instead of giving. And it's a bit backwards, isn't it? Because you can't, what did someone say to me once? You can't fill from an empty cup. So I can't give you the time and the energy and the focus and the attention and the care if I haven't given that to myself first, because then I'm in a depleted place. And I think about um, when I when I first went to, I actually didn't go to the hospital first off when I had the stroke because I didn't recognize what was going on. Even with all of my knowledge, it didn't present the way that they describe a stroke being presented. You can go back to one of my, I think it's on Instagram. I did a post on don't do this. That would be a year ago if you scroll back. But one of my messages from that was, what do you, so think about someone that you care about a lot. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a family member, someone that you care about a lot and that you want to have the best for, and you want them to be the happiest, healthiest person they can be. If you saw them struggling, if you saw them pushing too hard, if you saw them not taking care of themselves, what would you tell them? You would tell them to rest. You would tell them to take care of themselves. You would tell them to take the time for themselves to recharge their batteries so that they could go back out and keep doing what they want to do. So if they are important enough that you would give them that advice, why wouldn't you be important enough to take that advice yourself? That's your thought for today. So that is how this podcast came about. This podcast came about because I wanted to be able to fill up as many people as I could with as much information, resources, ideas, different ways of thinking, maybe even a little aha here and there would be pretty awesome. Just anything to help you figure out how to best structure your best life. It's individual, your best life, so that you can be your happiest self. You can figure out what it is you need to fill you up in this life, to fulfill your life purpose, even if you want to go that far. I want to give you those ideas. That's why I bring on the celebrities every Friday because they are all brilliant in their own right. And I love talking to them. And I always learn something new from them. So I want to help you. I want to help them. And in the process, I get filled up as well because I want to keep filling my cup. And that is our Wednesday. This is it's not only our Wednesday, it's also our season 2. Cue the cheering. Yay! They're not very enthusiastic. Oh, come on, you guys, cheer louder. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All applause is welcome. So this week, I'm going to invite you to think about if you could step outside of your life and look at it um, and from an impartial point of view. What advice would you give yourself? What advice would you give yourself? If you're not happy right now, what advice would you give yourself? And if it helps, pretend it's not you. You know that I have this friend who is having this problem. Remember those conversations? Yeah, it's not me, it's my friend. I have this friend who has this problem, and maybe you can help me out. Even, have a conversation, pretend it's a friend of yours who's has whatever's going on, and have a conversation with them. Or heck, have a conversation with me. Have a quick little, like, we'll get on a call with people, and definitely I love having a little, I call it a discovery call, where we can just chat about what it is you want and some ideas to get you there. How do you find me? Show notes, Prosperity Flow Coaching. You can email me, you can text me, you can DM me. Maybe I don't always see the DMs. Just give you the heads up right there. Um, but you can always go to my website and spend this week, spend a few days, spend a few minutes just thinking about, if I was a friend of mine, what would I advice would I give myself to be my happiest and healthiest self? And sometimes you're in the right place, sometimes you're not. And that's okay too. Happy season 2, my friends. Welcome to season 2. I hope you have an outstanding day. Feel free to reach out to me if you're ever interested in having a conversation. And be well, my friends.